Thank you.
Okay.
Would you all please rise for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Both ambulance services, we're planning on being here today, but I called them off because, in fact, Jeremy actually was still here. They will be reporting to us at the next meeting. I told them not to not come if there was something important or if there was something that needed to be attended to, and neither one said anything. This morning, we're going to hear from Eric Volkman from Prospect Bank for about a half an hour max. We'll see, I don't know how much time or questions we'll need. At 10 o'clock, we're gonna go into executive session for personnel and land acquisition. So I would like to introduce Eric Volkman to you. He's gonna be talking to us about some of the options we have on financing and maybe even interest rates, trying to get ahead of interest rates. Eric, please come on up here if you would. Thank you.
Pass down some book. Go ahead, everyone. Here, please.
Thank you.
First start, have you guys talked about this much at all? At all?
No, we just started talking about what, last meeting, and they asked me to start working on it.
Okay.
And so that's where we're at.
Well, let me first say, we may be too late to hit the window of lower rates. Rates have really shot up substantially, and I think we're all in a situation where we're trying to hedge against rising cost, and rising cost is also higher interest rates. If you would go to page 17, I'll back up a little bit to give you an idea of what we're concerned about is we're obviously looking at building a new jail here for Edgar County, and we applaud your efforts in doing that. It's much needed. Plus, I think it's a fantastic improvement for the area as well. The money, I know you guys are still looking at cost and proposals and things like that. So we're trying to figure out where is the rest of the money? In other words, you have some money from the safety tax. What can you leverage in order to turn it into the principal to cover the cost of building a jail? The lower the rates, the higher the dollar amount you get for the debt service that you're able to afford in this process. If you look at page 17, it gives you an idea of where rates are compared to average. The bad news is, as you see that in the far right, April 22, that huge jump where it's gone up substantially from where it was during the pandemic, and we're on a rise. And so if we started today, realistically, you're looking at end of June, probably more realistically a July closing. And so in July, you've got to hedge it to what you think rates are going to be in that July closing. There's lots of ways to do this. There's different firms that you can hire, or municipal advisors, in order to make sure you're doing this in a legal fashion. This is much different than us doing a lease on a backhoe, for example. We've done several municipal leases for you. These bonding opportunities are statutorily done, and so there's much limited ways you can do that. So assuming we want to hedge for future rising rates, typically you would go to, and I'm on page 4 real quick, you would look at what your general obligation bonds would be, leases, installment contracts, and so forth. your maximum, including what you currently have, would be $9,755,494, which is a calculation based on the equalized assessed valuation of the entire county. So if you take a look at page 4, you see the 2020 EAV of $392 million. The debt limit's 11.2. You've got the debt that's out there of $1.5 million in total. So there's how much you can actually do. However, the jail's going to cost you more than what you can actually do on the equalized assessed valuation of doing just a straight general obligation bond. And the acts, the Local Government Debt Reform Act actually provides on page 5 a statute that says, hey, you can go above that limit so long as you're building a jail, you know, or courthouse, or basically offices for your services you actually provide. So I wanted to make sure you see that there are some methods that you can go above that EAV, and you passing that safety tax, providing you the money that you're getting in on an annual basis, affords you to be able to do quite a bit more than what otherwise would be available to you. So what options do you actually have? If you turn to page 6, you really come in and you have the unlimited tax general obligation bonds. You could actually have a referendum passed and say, hey, we want to spend $20 million on a bond. You could go to the taxpayers and say, this is what it's going to cost. We have this much of safety tax. We have this much we need to pass to increase the taxes on property. And that's one option you could do, but the max term on that's 20 years. And I think if you're trying to keep it within the confines of the safety tax, that 20 years is not going to get you enough to build that jail, assuming a $15 to $20 million level in the jail when you kind of level it off. The next way is the general obligation alternative revenue bond, and that's a GO plus the revenue of the safety tax being pledged. This is your longest time period you can stretch this thing out in order to pay for the jail. That's up to 40 years. And I think that this, cut to the chase, is probably the best alternative you have in order to fund the jail project. The other way is much easier. It's a debt certificate. A debt certificate is a 20-year maximum term. This is very similar to what you do with a mortgage on your home. So it's the most similar to just like you're doing a mortgage. The debt certificates, and the straight revenue bond is the other way, which you would only pledge the safety tax revenue and go from there. Let's talk a little bit about the history of your bonds. I think it's page 14. I hate to be jumping around for you, but we kind of laid this out. You actually put together a bond issue, $815,000. Help me out for those of you who are here. Was that the courthouse Lady Justice project?
Tower.
Yeah. So you did a bond issue back in 2010. Used Bernardi. I've used them before. So I'm giving you a little history of when you borrowed the money there. Bernardi puts a public offering together, put together the whole package. I think that was the leverage piece that you had to have under the stimulus package at that time, if I remember most of the municipalities doing it. But it cost $15 per thousand in order to do that offering through Bernardi. And what you can do is you hire a firm that has expertise in this area. I'm on page 15 now. And I'll just give you an idea of laying out the full disclosure of all the costs to actually put together a debt issue. And here would be a typical offering. You would have bond counsel that the board actually engages to hire. Those are typically between $30,000 and $50,000. There's two primary firms that do it in the state of Illinois, Chapman and Cutler, and then Gilmore and Bell is the other one. The disclosure counsel, which is in this case would be Baird. I've selected, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But Baird is a disclosure counsel, so they put together all the disclosures so that we can offer it out to the public in order to buy it. The underwriting fee to get underwriter, rating agencies, for example, then you have an insurance agency if you want to get insured. You can kind of see how this cost lays out if you went that route of a full public offering there. If our bank takes it, we are getting rid of all those costs, okay? So what I mean by that is you still have to hire bond counsel engaged by the board in order to put together all the paperwork, make sure you're doing it in a legal fashion. But we don't need the disclosures, we don't need to hire the underwriter. The underwriter's over here in this corner right here, right behind me, Darren. And then the rating agencies we don't need, and then we don't need the paying agent. So it sounds almost too good to be true, but you get a cheaper rate if you go this route on the public offering side. We get a little higher rate because you don't do that, but we do the whole thing, so it ends up costing you quite a bit less. So it's $4 per thousand on an estimated cost just by paying the bond counsel, and then we take the whole thing. So why would you choose us over doing a public offering? Well, I think you ought to see what the public would do in rates, what we're gonna do in rates, and then look at the terms out there. I believe, and I think it's anybody's guess, but I believe we're gonna go through this rate increase for a period of time, and then our Federal Reserve, who's increasing these rates, are gonna back off of this rate increase because it's gonna throw the economy into a recession once all the liquidity gets pulled out of that was put into the economy during the pandemic period of time. That would give you the opportunity to have rates come down and then refinance this. If you go the public offering route, you will not be able to call these bonds or refinance these bonds by doing that under the public offering. So that's a very important distinction between doing something direct with us versus doing something through a public offering, because those bonds become non-callable for a number of years.
So when you go to the public offering, once you lock that in, it's for the duration
You
of
can't
the-
pay it off early, because the
Okay.
public's not willing to buy those bonds
Right.
on those long maturities and
Mhm.
take all the rate risk. And so you get stuck in that process of being done. And you probably picked up in the paper where we've refunded District 95, Clark Edgar, and so forth. We were waiting for the call periods to be done so that we could call those bonds, and they always have a date that you can call it. So in each one of those cases, we called those bonds the day we could early prepay those things. In the case of 95, we ended up getting to do that last summer, and in the case of Clark Edgar, we couldn't do it until December. So just in that time period, there was almost a 1.6% difference in rates out there. So it was huge savings. It was still a savings over what they were paying on their coupon rates, but District 95 ended up saving about $650,000 over what they had over the life of their bonds. So that's the key difference here. The other thing I wanted to do, this is very large. It's the largest that we can do. We're about $16.4 million that we can do internally with you. Then we would negotiate a price based on market rates, and then we would go to the other local banks and offer them what piece that they would want of this thing under the terms that we negotiated. And I'm not sure the other banks will like the idea that we're giving you the option to prepay it or refinance it. But you can count on the fact that every time you refinance it, it's going to cost bond counsel cost. But as rates come down, we'll give you the opportunity to redo it because we want this new jail. I'm talking we being Prospect Bank. I think this is a very important thing for the community to have this and consolidate the efforts of your offices and lower the cost of the operations there. But anyway, if you want to look at what type of financing we're looking at, you can go to page.
I have one question
Go
for
ahead.
that. You said the 16.4, that's the max?
That's the most we can do through our legal lending limit of a bank. So
Okay. So if the jail come in at 18 million, then you'd have to get some,
I definitely have to sell another 2 million.
okay.
Instead, so I have to negotiate with another bank to
Okay.
do it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what we're here for.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a good question. if it comes in at 20, and you wanna borrow 20, then I have to find 4 out there. And so then I have to make sure that bank's rate that I'm participating with, will allow those terms. If we stay within that 16.4, then we can do the best we can and definitely make it no prepayment, because a lot of banks don't like not doing a prepayment penalty when you do long-term fixed, and that's what we're talking about here.
Are you gonna talk, and I assume you're gonna talk about, your max per year and what we might do in the shortened term to alleviate some of the rate issues?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. In looking at the options to borrow, my conclusion is your GO alternate revenue bond's the best way to go because you can do the longer terms, okay? There's a couple caveats to that. You have to have a 1.25% coverage ratio, which means if you have $1 million a year of debt service, you have to have $1.25 million worth of revenue, okay? So that's the 1.25% return that you have to have. And bond counsel will make sure that you have a history and a forecast to see that you're gonna be able to meet that hurdle, all right? So if you have $1 million and it's about $850 that you can actually do, and then bond counsel will say, well, you can only borrow this much money based on that particular program. Right now, your safety tax is bringing in about 1.4. I was going to say 1.3 is a low, and so you're going to be able to get anything you want from a 1.25 coverage ratio out there. The other restriction is you have what they call bank qualified and non-bank qualified, okay? Bank qualified essentially means you get a cheaper rate. Non-bank qualified means you either have a choice of splitting it between 2 years, because you can only do $10 million in a given year. So that means this year you do 10, and then next year you can go up to your next 10. But that's the maximum you can do in any 1 year. And the IRS, back in '86, I think it was, Reagan tax year actually, came out with that. So banks didn't use their interest expense as a deduction, and then you go out and you finance with municipalities 10 million at a tax-free, so they carved out these limits. So if you want to do it all at once, you have to do what they call a non-bank qualified, so you have a little bit higher rate. So if you go to page 12, I'll show you a real quick table that kind of gives you an idea of what that means. So under scenario number 1, if you do a $10 million bank qualified this year, okay, you can have a $900,000 debt service. If you look at that underneath there down at the bottom, the true interest cost on that in today's interest environment is a 4.42%, and that's the bank qualified. If you do it under a non-bank qualified, do the whole thing, you pay about 39 basis points higher in order to do the whole thing at non-bank qualified out there. And then scenario number 3 is you're borrowing the full 16.5. We're having to put it out over a long time period, or a 20-year period. So you have an 18, a 30, and a 20-year period, depending on how you want to put that together. The other rule you have that there's 2 key things here is whatever you borrow, the day you close on that loan, you have to meet 2 requirements. One is 5% of the whole bond amount needs to be spent within the first 6 months. And then the other is the rest of it has to be, 85% of it has to be spent within 3 years. All right, so
3 years.
3 years.
I thought it was 2, but that's fine.
Yeah, it's 3
Or
years.
1 year.
Yeah, it's 3 years.
Oh, that's.
Yeah, so 85% has to be 3 years. Now, there's some things that bond counsel we can work through. For example, you've already spent some money in soft cost, and so the question is, can that be reimbursed or that be counted in that 5%? And or if you have some ground you want to acquire or tear down or whatever, you want to spend that 5% within that 6-month time period out there. So In a nutshell, I'm gonna summarize quickly the rules, is 10 million or the full 16.5 or whatever you think it's gonna cost you to build this jail, lock in the rates, okay? And then hopefully rates come down within the 3 years of construction, which you actually have, so you can refinance this at a lower rate, save everybody money. If you decide to hedge a little bit, you can hedge by doing 10 million, then you have to spend 500,000 within 6 months, right? 85% within the 3 years, but you're gonna know, you're gonna have to go back in and borrow more money to finish the jail. So you're gonna have 2 series of bonds, one now and then one at a later date, and hopefully rates don't go up too much, but you could have one rate today, next year rates are higher, you're gonna have another rate again, you see, at a higher rate, and during the life of those bonds, likely rates will come back down. Because they have, if you can see, over the last several years.
The $10 million option for the first year, or right now, how long would we have to put that up for? In other words, would that be an 18, could that be a 20, could that be a,
So you could do, well, if we do a geo alternate revenue, you could do 40 if you wanted to.
well,
But the reality is you're gonna wanna have enough powder dry so that you can have debt service on the second tier in order to pay for the
right,
jail.
I just saw this 18 years and we're getting 97, or 9.7.
7 million,
And it's costing us 900 a year right off the
that's
bat.
right.
That'd be a
That-
little tough.
That'd be tough. So you would wanna probably match it out to 30 years.
Right.
And then you'll have a lower debt service, so then you can meet the terms there.
Okay.
And at least you've hedged that 10 for the rising interest rate costs.
And then we can read, what's the normal time that you have to wait to buy the coupons back? Or, I
Well,
mean,
we're gonna, if we do the whole thing, we will allow you to do it any time. It takes about 90 days, so.
well, I didn't know whether there was a time limit, we couldn't do it the first year or whatever.
We're not gonna require that.
Okay, I'm just
Yeah,
asking.
I'd say it's a 90-day notice. It's gonna
Okay.
take that long to
Okay.
re-ante it back up. And I'll check with the other banks that they're willing to do that as well, but I doubt it. We are willing to do it.
No, you know, everybody needs an opportunity.
That's right.
where we're gonna head.
That's a lot of numbers.
It is.
Yeah.
It
Did
is.
you figure that all out the first time through?
No,
Have you lost your mind?
Well, this is my second time through it, and I haven't got it all figured out.
And I apologize
You have to
for
read this.
jumping around, but it's,
I'm never gonna figure this
No.
out, but I'm gonna take your word for it.
right.
Well, that's why you hire a $30,000 bond counsel, so.
Right.
to make sure make sure you do it right.
We let him do the work, we just say yes.
And I picked Baird to work, if it, like I said, if it was simple, like if it was a debt certificate, if it was a municipal lease project, we do those ourselves. When you get into this, we bring in an expert. And I use Stiefel, I've used Bernardi, I've used King Financial, but Baird, I think, for this project is the best one to do. Delina Welcomer does a fantastic job.
So that figure can be spread out in other banks, is that what you're saying? The 16?
Possibly.
Yeah,
Or you can do it yourself?
we can do it ourselves
Okay.
for that 16.
But you can only do, like, we can only borrow what? Up to bond was 16?
16.4, by the time we close, let's say, every quarter, our legal lending limit increases, so we'll probably be at about 16.5, 16.6 by then.
Yeah. Andy and I sat down with you, what was that, last Thursday or something like that? Went through this,
The numbers.
see if it warranted bringing it to you guys. Questions? Well, I mean, this is not something we're gonna decide.
Crystal ball, you say you look for long-term, the rates will drop at some point.
Yeah, crystal means it's a forecast, you can't rely on it
Right.
50% right, 50% wrong. But I think once this liquidity gets stripped out of the system, rates will come back down a little bit.
So your
They'll
bank-
back off. I
your
don't think they'll
bank-
get down to where they were during the pandemic, but they'll come back down.
Your bank has enough money to do the 16.5, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if I were,
If your bank
if I were
pops up.
your board, I would lock down this money so long as you know, within 3 years you can build this jail. Okay? Because at least you hedge the increases of cost on the money side of it. Your material side, go out and start cutting your contracts for everything you need to do to get your material cost. Because once you get the money, the construction cost is going up 18 to 26% a year right now, on average. So if you're looking at the construction piece of this, the construction side of this is what's really gonna be the cost increases.
Yeah, that was my question as far as locking it in. You know, if it's gonna be a year from now before we're gonna know if we can even do it, we could lock it in here soon, and then if it doesn't go, then what happens?
You end up paying off all the debt.
You just take the
And
money,
all you did was hedge for interest rate increases.
and before we do that, we can put the money in CDs, and we're at least making something back.
Right.
Right.
And that may go up, it may not, who knows?
Mhm.
But then we can just,
So we did the same thing in Champaign where they were building a new school. And Champaign ladders out their CDs because they have that 3-year period. And so then they have a CD coming due every 3 months so that they can take advantage of rising rates. And we do a laddering program that we can recommend for you. So you can average, in today's market, you can average between 1 and 1.5% on your CD. So your net cost ends up being substantially below what the inflationary increases are.
So what's the current, you know, if in the next 2 weeks we would agree to do this, what's the rate?
Well, we went and looked at what rates
Roughly.
were at the end of last week, and
Okay,
you're looking in the 4s.
is it these figures here?
That's right.
On page 12,
Those are what the rates are if you did a 30-year fixed rate loan, for example.
and we're looking probably at scenario 2,
Yep, that's what I would,
that's what I'm thinking.
right?
lock it all in,
Mhm.
and then you've hedged that piece of it, and then you're ready to, you just gotta get building. You got that 3-year, and then all of a sudden your time frame
I'm
is,
kinda concerned how we're gonna spend $500,000 in 6 months.
How much we,
I had my wife help you. She,
we can put up a lot of nice lights for you
He's just kidding.
downtown.
yeah, I was just kidding.
Right, if we
No,
spend
you
$500,000 and then decided not to build a jail, then that's a problem.
Well,
we do it all the time
Give
when
it
we're
back.
building roads.
Give it
I mean,
back.
you kinda hedge, you spend the money because you've got to have certain metrics met if something comes up.
well, I think we could easily spend on acquisitions and so forth,
Right.
some of that. I don't wanna give a figure. But we might be able to put a roof and do some additional work at another place.
Is that
Yes.
possible?
Well, not another place. I'm talking about there on the property where we're gonna put the
Oh,
jail.
you mean the,
Like inside the building or
the
something.
advanced building, putting the
Right.
roof on, did?
Which is gonna be part of that count.
Yeah.
One of the things you have to do is you'll have a narrative describing the project that this
Right.
bond is, and
We're
so
already
your
preparing
scope of that project becomes the key language that you wanna have
Yeah.
in that.
I've already asked for
And we
that
could-
to be
that's
You
prepared.
did say that we could use past money that we've already spent on the project?
I'll have to check, because we went and got a bid for bond counsel, Friday, and one got back to us, the other one didn't. And so it depends on which one you get, and even within the firm, Chapman and Keller, it depends on the bond counsel. But a lot of times, for example, Chastain, I think, I've talked to, you may be able to count some of the money you've already spent on it, because it's for this project.
We spent money with architects and engineers
That's right.
also.
And I think that'll be reimbursable within this project.
Okay. Well, I mean, we're gonna have to talk about it some more. I don't think anybody's ready to make a decision right now. and we can't legally, yes, Lisa.
So if we went with this though, where's our conversation on USDA money?
Well, I mean, they may be
It's
able,
an either or, right?
well, we'd still continue with that. They might be able to offer us the second half of it. I mean, you wanna answer that?
So if they have a better deal for you, take it. In other words, you're not gonna hurt our feeling, we're just trying to come up with solutions.
Could we
that
take
are-
their money and pay you off?
You could,
Okay,
you could.
that's kind of.
And that's why I'm saying that, we're very, I hate to, we're very generous in not doing a prepayment penalty or making these callable. But I think it's important for you to know you have the money. I think the public, once they see that you guys are serious and you have the money to do this, then you're gonna have all kinds of, you may get the city to do things, you may get other organizations to wanna jump in and participate with you. And remember, if the city leases or ambulance services leases, then that counts as revenue as that 125 coverage ratio. In the case of any governmental agency, you'll have to get intergovernmental agreements. In the case of nonprofits, you'll have to get some long-term leases that count as that revenue source for that 125 coverage.
And we don't risk getting USDA money when we find out we've already obtained local funding.
Well, I can't say that.
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know if there's a but for, otherwise you wouldn't have the money or not, I don't know about that. They use the same places we do though, when they do those USDA, they use the same bond counsel, same underwriting, same insurance agencies, when they go through ratings like that.
I will try to find out.
I guess that would be my one concern. Would we be putting all our eggs in one basket and not being able to be viable for them to consider us?
Well, unless we said that, you know, if you go ahead with this deal, we'll pay the other one off. And
Yeah,
we've just done this to continuity and to say, but I don't know whether that's gonna wash. Yes, Carl?
But if we decide to do this with Eric, we're locking our price, or rates in. We're not to the point we can lock anything in with
No,
USDA.
We're years out.
Yeah, we may
Most
be
of
a
those take
year
a
out.
long time.
Yeah,
Right,
so,
so thinking USDA is gonna be cheaper, a year from now, I'm sure rates aren't gonna be cheaper.
right, I
bird
just
in the
didn't
hand
wanna,
is worth two in the
Right.
fish.
right, I just,
I will find out that. I will talk to the guy in Polk County, remind me. Okay?
What's the economic development, or the USDA guy?
No, it would be the
regional,
regional planning commission director,
Okay.
and he may have to find out, but, okay? We'll talk about it again on Wednesday.
Would you like me to summarize the best I can, the whole?
Yeah, please, sir.
So, bank qualified, non-bank qualified, in other words, you 10 million this year, knowing that you're gonna have to get more next year or beyond, right? You still have the 5% rule, and you still have the 3-year rule on that block of funds. That's at the cheapest rate today you can get. You go non-bank qualified, that means you're doing the whole amount, all right, 16, 5, 18, whatever it may turn out to be. You still have the 5% rule, you still have the 85% spent within 3 years. And that's a little higher rate. You're looking at a GO alternate revenue bond, which means you have to have that 125 coverage ratio, right? So whatever your revenues are, backs into what you can service, and whatever you can service backs into what your principal amount is or the term of the bond debt's gonna be. Longer you go, the higher the rates. Public offering is your option, rated, insured, underwritten, highest cost, a little cheaper rate. Private offering, quicker. You still have to do a backdoor referendum under those alternate revenue bonds. The process to do that, you'll cut loose, is on page 7. And we've laid out what it takes you to do the backdoor referendum on page 7.
when you say, what do you consider? I mean, we've already done the safety tax.
Yes,
So I'm,
you've done that, and so you're gonna count that, but you still have to go through a series of meetings, so I've gone through and shown you here, week 1, 2, 3, 4, what you would need to
and
do.
this is not the process we have to go to get the 10 million.
You,
This is,
you still have to go through this.
so you still,
Yeah, you still have to go through this.
all right, that's what I'm asking.
So you'll
So
have,
any of the options we do.
any of them, you're gonna do this page.
So-
We're gonna have to go back to the public and,
Not, you just have to send a notice out. You've gotta publish in the paper that you're gonna have hearings on it.
but not an actual
Not,
election.
not a referendum.
Referendum.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
backdoor referendum.
Okay, I got
In
you.
other words, we tell people here locally how we're gonna do this.
That's right.
Right.
And you
Okay.
publish it in the
Keep Tim
paper.
busy.
That's correct.
Is it gonna be 3 months before we're able to secure it?
That's a realistic time frame.
Okay.
So whatever rates are that, when can we lock in rate?
If you tell me you were doing this, in other words, you engage Baird and us to do this, we'll lock you in today. Up there,
So
so
would it be,
so we're gonna lock you in because we want you to have the ability to say, we know we're doing this.
Okay.
okay?
And we know you're gonna refinance this one of these days. There is gonna be an opportunity to refinance it.
I knew we'd have to do all the stuff from week 9 to 12, but. Yep.
So this page here is important because this is what you would have to do. in order to do it.
So if we borrow tomorrow and rates go up, as they probably are, at least for some amount of time, and we've got it in a bond, or in a CD,
Mhm.
well, chances are, it's gonna be paying more as you go along also, correct?
That's exactly right.
So you could essentially have very little cost if rates continue to go up.
That's correct.
Well,
And I even have
That's-
some,
yeah.
and it's called arbitrage, so you can't arbitrage, but you can go all the way to your zero bound. In other words,
Okay.
rates could go up to 4 and
sorry,
you're,
you can't pay us
and you're paying
anymore.
for it, right, right.
Who would?
And actually, there's some things you can do that could happen.
Never.
Okay. All right.
But think of it this way, if rates are 4, CDs are 1, you're paying 3, right? So if rates are 4, CDs are 2, you're paying 2. And what's the inflation rate? 6%? 7?
Yep.
We're still losing.
Yeah.
Well,
So
actually,
we
you've
built-
gained.
Okay.
Well,
You've gained in that, but you're still paying a cost.
right.
But you just locked in the money.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
if where we're losing money though is not constructing,
Right.
because that's.
That's the
considered-
18, 20, 25%.
Right.
Because material and labor costs are going up substantially faster than interest rates.
Any other questions? We really appreciate it,
All right.
and we will consult with each other, get an agenda item on if we feel that's the appropriate way to do it, and then let you know.
Next step would be engage us to do the municipal
Right.
advisory work
Right.
out there.
So at that point, I will let you know, and then maybe you can help us prepare a resolution that says what it needs to say.
We can do that.
All right?
Did I miss anything, Darren?
I think so.
Okay.
That's good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Well, if that's not a lot to think about, how's that, guys?
Yeah,
And, yes.
this little sleepover.
And, think about it, we'll talk about it on Wednesday, how we wanna approach this. And we can always set up individual meeting or whatever, and go from there.
Yeah.
I'm assuming for bond counsel, would we have to get the state's attorney's permission to hire a bond counsel?
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, but that's a formality that we cannot forget. All right, we want to move into a closed session on personnel and/or land acquisition. I don't see it taking too long, but that's up to us. Can I hear a motion to do that? Andy moves, Phil seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. So I would ask Tim's Day.
I don't want that on there at all. Good, I'm glad you said that.
Let's, do we have anything we really need reports on?
No.
We can just, I just wanna make sure you saw the vacancies in the health department. So we're gonna, there's a meeting next week, so we need to get everybody,
Next Wednesday
on
morning.
board and, notified. I'll call Janet and let her know.
I'm sure, I think there's a meeting next week. I'm not
Well, I'll
sure,
double
so
check. I was gonna
check.
call her.
I'm gonna ask you to check on it, so.
I talked to Ollie last week, and he was very positive about what we're doing. And,
Good people are.
He
Yeah.
doesn't want me on it, so.
Good. Good. That's
who,
good.
Ollie?
I'm just kidding.
Okay,
So, I've got,
we met with Allison. Okay, go
go.
ahead. We met with Allison, and Lisa and I both did, and we found her delightful and determined. How's that?
Yeah, I think so too.
She's
Sounds
been
good.
with the HRC for 21 years. She has seemed to be very able, and, you know, as long as there's enough folks on the board to show up and everything, I
Right,
think we'll
that's
be
what I
fine
thought,
with
yeah.
her.
Scott will do a good job too.
Yes, Carl?
And Scott's taken
Cindy's,
Cindy's spot.
no, Scott's the extra.
Oh, the extra,
Yeah.
and Allison's filling
Taking
Cindy's
Cindy's
spot.
Correct.
We're still gonna probably have another vacancy eventually,
Well,
so
Right,
I'm not gonna worry about it right now.
yeah,
And we've got a couple of folks in mind for that.
okay.
Okay.
Let's see, John Chittick, Greg Henry, and Dale English, the Farmland Board. The Centennial Committee up in Chrisman has requested us for the maximum amount we can give them under the
Yeah.
hotel motel tax.
What does that mean, maximum amount? All the money we have up there they want, is that what they're saying?
They just want what we're comfortable in giving them.
Okay.
Remember what we
We
did
do it.
last year?
1,500? That's too much, like five.
I think it was like 800
Or did we
or
have
500.
that, did we have that much in?
We have $842 or
Oh,
something in there.
where'd I get that 15?
Yeah.
Do we give them 500?
I think it's 500 less.
Yeah, that's where I got it. I used to add 1,000 to it.
Yeah.
Let's see, Evolution's going back
I was
on the
close.
Fire Protection Board. And then we've got resolution to reappointment, okay. Signed addendum, service agreement with Klinger Associates, which they will handle, more exact tubing or borings out there to determine if there's actually any
Problems.
problems. And that would be on 3 properties, okay? Then authorize a consulting service, remember Massey and Massey? We've come up with a 2-year contract with them for 39 grand to work with whatever architects and engineers that we have to make sure that the courthouse and any project down on the T or Clinton Road, also we would use them as far as the jail to make sure that it's aesthetically worked in to the whole surrounding in the neighborhood.
How they doing on the 3rd story in the jail, you know?
Yeah. I don't know.
Heard.
I guess the electrician showed up one day and put some lights in.
We still have female inmates.
Yeah, but I don't think they're crunched right now.
Okay, I
I don't think it's presented a problem. If it was, I think.
He just said.
I talked to Jeff at breakfast about it last week, and the electrician said that they'd only sent in one guy, 1 or 2 days, and that they were gonna try to hit it this week, that's all I know.
talked to Andrea, everything's fine at the spiritual.
Everybody's happy.
Yep, she's trying to find a cap for the pickup. Can't find a cap for the top.
Well, they told me they ordered one for her.
Okay. Okay.
It's got a sliding tray in it,
Yeah.
so that they can use that, and then, you know, it's a topper for it,
Right,
so.
good trick.
Okay. Anything else to come before the meeting? Motion to adjourn. Andy
Second.
moves, Phil seconds, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned.